I'm Vimal Ananthe. I'm interviewing Sergeant Major Madline Lewis on behalf of the Veterans History Project for the Office of Congresswoman Donna L. Edwards and of the Library of Congress. We are working in conjunction with Prince George's Community College. Today's date is September 19, 2014, and we are located in the television studio of Prince George's Community College in Largo, Maryland. I recently met Sergeant Major Lewis. Included in the room is with Ms. Lewis or myself and the camera operator, Stephanie Escobar. This project is being coordinated by Professor Teresa Devil West, Mr. Del Roden, and Dr. Cheryl Williams. The purpose of this interview is to gain insight into the life of United States military veterans currently residing in the state of Maryland. Let's begin. How would you like for me to address you?
My rank when I came out of the service was Sergeant Major, so Sergeant Major Lewis is fine.
Right. Where were you born?
I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana.
What are some of your fondest memories of childhood?
Oh, wow. I actually had a very, very great childhood. It's my sister and myself. We grew up in uptown New Orleans, and we just had a lot of activities. You know, my parents always kept us in a lot of things, like we had to take piano lessons and, you know, swimming lessons. So I know how to swim, although my sister doesn't. She just never could get, used to being in all that water, but I actually loved it. And so during the summer, used to do a lot of swimming. We used to have like I said, we had a lot of activities. We used to go to camp, things like that, because I think one of the things for us growing up in the South, my mother especially, she wanted to make sure that we were in places that she felt was safe for us. And I think that's why she, tend to put us in so many activities where we would be around a lot of kids, and also in a way she would also know where we were, and that, while she was at work or what have you, everything would be okay. And so I think that's why she tended to keep us active the way she did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you mind sharing your birth date?
If I must. Yes, I was born October 3rd, 1954.
Tell me about your parents.
My parents? I got to tell you, I love my dad, but my mom was my role model. And I say that because, watching her when I was growing up, the things that she did and the way that she handled things, and the things that she taught us, to my sister and I, to make sure that we always remembered that you can do anything that you wanted to do, that you don't let can't be the word in your vocabulary. And she would not accept things like, I can't do this or I can't do that. Well, if you didn't try it, no, you can't do it. But, she was always pushing us to do our best. So she was my role model. And I just, where I am today, I just feel that it's because of her and the things that she taught me as a young girl growing up in New Orleans. My dad, he had a lot of values that he instilled in us also, but it was just different. Some say daddy's girl, but I was a mama's girl. So for me, my mom was my role model.
Nice. Yeah. What did they do for occupations? Well,
my dad, he, as I can remember growing up, he did a lot of different things, but he was also in the military. I remember him being in the military for a while. And but when he came out of the military, he worked in the city government. Mm-hmm. And my mom, she was, first she was home, she was a homemaker, and then she started working at a school. So she did, she wasn't a teacher, she was like one of the assistants that helped in the schools. But that was pretty much the occupation that I remembered from, my
your
childhood.
Parents.
Yeah.
Do you have any siblings?
I have one sister, so it's just the two of us. My sister is still in New Orleans, still there. She's not one of those people to kind of venture too far away, but It's just the two of us, and we, like I said, growing up, she's older than I am.
She's older.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm the youngest, and she never let me forget that. But it's okay, because I know when we were growing up, I was probably a holy terror to her, because I was always kind of messing with her, and you know how little
Yeah,
kids
true.
do when they have older sisters. I was always getting on her nerves, so to speak. So, but we do okay now. We get along fine. I don't get on her nerves, I think, quite as much as I did when we were little.
Where'd you grow up again?
In New Orleans.
New Orleans. All right. Apart from your dad, do any of your family members serve in the military?
My dad did. I know we had other family members that served in the military. I just don't remember offhand. I know my grandfather did. My father's, I think one of his brothers also served in. My dad was in the Navy, though.
Oh,
Yeah, he was in the Navy.
now can we go back to your school days?
Uh-huh.
Who were some of your best friends growing up?
Who were some of my best friends growing up? Oh my, we had, you know, when I was growing up, it was one of those things where everybody in the neighborhood kind of knew each other. And so my best friends, I think, would have been Gail. Her name was Gail Jones. She was probably the best friend I ever had. As a matter of fact, she's one of the people that helped me learn how to drive and to get around New Orleans when my mom bought me a car after I graduated. That was my graduation present. And Gail was the person who helped me to really learn how to drive and to get around New Orleans, because her mom bought her a car also, so I used to follow her around. I'm in my car and she's in hers, so I would follow her around, and that's how I learned how to get around the city in the car. Another friend I had was Charlotte, and Charlotte, you know, the two of them, they were very different, but they were just great friends. And another really good friend was Gwendolyn Sly, and as a matter of fact, she was just up here she came to visit me about 3 weeks ago. Her and another friend of mine, Mona Thomas, they came to visit me, and I tell you, we had a great time, because this was the first time they had ever been to Washington, D.C. So we had a fantastic time, you know, remembering the old memories. And the three of us, as a matter of fact, all three of us worked for the telephone company in New Orleans at one point, and we got laid off, all three of us at the same time. And so we were joking about the fact, and we always laugh about the fact that, you know, when we got laid off, how we would all three of us go together looking for another job, and just kind of getting lost, you know, trying to find different places in Metairie, and we're getting lost. And so we were just laughing about that. But it was just great to be with them again, because like I said, you know, childhood memories, you always think about those things that you did, the crazy stuff that you did, you know.
Do you want to share some of the crazy stories that you and your friends did?
I don't know if I want to put any of that on camera, but
it's okay.
You know, we just did the normal childhood things, I think. Like I remember one time I was not supposed to, I had been told that I couldn't go to this event that they were having. It was like a little what they used to call them back then when you had the little school dances, soccer. I can't remember what the exact name of it now, but anyway, I wasn't supposed to go. I had done something, and I was kind of punished. And but the thing about it is, my parents made the mistake of leaving me home, and they had gone somewhere to some outing that they were going to, and so I thought, well, I'll just go and take a look, and I'll come right back. And you know, of course, my two buddies, they were there to instigate me on. So yeah, you can go. We'll get you back in time. Well, needless to say, I did go, and needless to say, I didn't get back before my parents did, and so that was a whole nother story right there, having to deal with them. So,
what high school did you go to?
I went to Booker T. Washington High School, and that was again, that was around uptown New Orleans, and I graduated from there in 72,
Wow.
1972. Yeah.
Hmm. So, what were you doing before you entered the service?
Before I entered the service, um, what was I doing? I was, I had gotten, let's see, because I graduated from high school, and I had started at Tulane University.
Uh-huh.
And what happened was that during that first year, because I had a scholarship, and during that first year at Tulane, kind of messed it up a little bit, not doing what I was supposed to do while I was in school. So I kind of messed that scholarship up. And there was my mom. She's like, "Oh, yeah, you messed it up, but you're going to finish school." She said, "I don't know how you're going to do it, but I'm going to give you 6 months to figure out how you're going to get back in and you're going to finish it." And so I thought to myself, wow, what am I going to do now? How am I going to pay for college? And so my thought was, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to join the military. And I had another friend of mine, when we graduated, she went straight into the military. And she used to send me these letters and, talk about how great it was and how much fun she was having. And she was stationed in Italy, I believe it was. And so she was, saying how great it was. And I thought, well, I'm going to join the military and I can go to Italy and I can be with her and we can have a lot of fun. Well, that didn't happen. I joined the military. I did not get assigned to Italy. As a matter of fact, the closest I got to Italy, I think, was when we were on some mission and they had a layover, and we didn't even get off the plane. They just fueled up and then we took off again. So that's probably the closest I ever got to Italy. But that was one of the reasons that I wound up in the military, to help pay for school.
Mm-hmm.
And it did that and more, because not only did it pay for school, but it also, I got to, see a lot of things, got to travel a lot, which is one of my ambitions too, to be able to travel, things like that. So I got to do those things.
And what branch did you serve?
I was in the Army.
Army.
Yes, I went into the Army. And my first assignment in the Army was in Virginia. Yeah, my first assignment was in Virginia, because I did my basic training in South Carolina. Yeah.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you choose that branch?
Well, I'm not quite sure why specifically the Army. I don't think I went in mind for the Army. I think that was the first person when I walked through the doors that greeted me. So that's who I talked to. But because it just never occurred to me to go into the Navy, which is strange, since I'm not afraid of water or anything like that. But I think that's because that was the first person that greeted me when I walked in the door.
That's why I joined.
Yeah, one of the Army recruiters, and they told me, all the things about the Army, about taking the test and different things, and so there I was, signing up for the Army.
How long did you serve?
I came out of the military in 2007. And I had 22 years at that time. So I stayed in. And I would have actually stayed, I think I would have stayed longer, but my mom got sick. And so I was, of course, up here at the time in Washington, D.C., and she got sick. So I was running back and forth to New Orleans, and I had achieved the rank of Sergeant Major at that time. And I've just always been a firm believer that you lead from the front, And so I didn't feel that it was fair to have that rank and not be there performing the duties that I needed to perform as a sergeant major. And so because I had to go back and forth, I put in my paperwork to retire. But it was funny because for several months, the paperwork didn't get processed.
Wow.
And I kept waiting and nothing was happening. So finally I called, and they told me, yeah, we submitted the paperwork. So finally I called the colonel and I said, sir, I haven't heard anything back from my retirement paperwork. And he goes, oh yeah, well, I thought you were just going to take a few months off and come back. But I told him I couldn't because, you know, I needed to focus at that point on my mom. Like I said, she had taken ill and I was going back and forth and it was just too much. So I
Sure.
finally had to kind of stay down there for a while and that would have, I would have been neglecting my duties on this end. So that's one of the reasons why I finally came out.
What was the highest rank you achieved?
That was Sergeant Major.
Sergeant Major.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you proud of your accomplishment?
Yes, I am, and I am because to reach that rank as a female in the military, that was, it's not an easy thing to do. As a matter of fact, I you know, mentored and a lot of females while I was in the military and since I've been out. But, you know, trying to get to that rank in the military, it's not easy.
hard, yeah, it's hard.
And because once you get to a rank like that, even when you get to E7, Sergeant First Class, you know, you're over a lot of men who don't like to take orders from women. And I was actually in a civil affairs unit, which was, you know, mostly, a lot of times you have mostly men. And then my last unit right before I retired, I was in a training unit at Fort Belvoir, and I had 80 soldiers under my command because I was the commandant of a training unit. And so I was responsible for 3 military sites. I had a site in West Virginia, I had a site in Delaware, and there was the site in Maryland. So I had to make sure that I oversaw all they were, what happened was there were soldiers for National Guard. They were actually training on National Guard sites. We were all instructors at the time, and so they taught the Army's leadership courses, and they were teaching on National Guard sites. And so having Army soldiers on National Guard sites, we had to, you know, make sure that they were monitored, that they were okay, and that they were getting the equipment and things that they needed to do their assignments. So that meant I was traveling back and forth to all 3 of those sites for several years. I traveled from West Virginia to Delaware, to Fort Indian Town Gap in Pennsylvania. Oh my goodness, it was a lot, you know, trying to keep up with to make sure that the soldiers were okay and that they knew, hey, even though you're on a National Guard site, you're still Army, so you still have to make sure that you follow the guidelines for our, you know, our mission.
Let's talk about your training. Where were you trained?
For the military, I did my training at in South Carolina, and what was that? Fort Jackson. That's what it was. Fort Jackson in South Carolina.
How did you feel when you first discovered that's where you would start out?
Well, I didn't know where I was going to go for basic training. But Fort Indian Town Gap, I'm not Fort Indian, I'm talking Fort Jackson. It wasn't that bad because Fort Jackson had what they called, there were 2 areas of Fort Jackson. They had one area that they called Tank Hill and the other one that they call Hollywood. So guess where I was? In Hollywood, which meant that the barracks were just nicer than the other barracks. So that's where I was, in the newer barracks. But of course the training was you know, the same. You still had to go through that same rough training. Whenever you did something wrong, you got dropped for push-ups, and I was always getting dropped for push-ups. So but other than that, the base itself was nice. Fort Jackson was actually a nice base, and like I said, that's where I did my training and met a lot of nice people while I was there too.
They say military culture is different. Did you notice any big difference
Between the military culture and
life?
And the civilian?
Civilian, yeah.
Oh, definitely. It's definitely different because it's a more disciplined, it's more structured, more disciplined. For one thing, it's if you're a person that don't like to be told what to do 24 hours a day, the military might not be for you. Because that's basically what it is. You're told when to get up, you're told when to eat, you're told when to go to bed, you're told, you know, when to train, the type of training that you're going to be doing. and everything is structured. You have to be disciplined. And one of the things that I think that I learned from the military is the discipline, and to understand that, they tend to say that in the military you hurry up and wait. Well, that's true. I mean, you might rush everywhere you go. You might have to run here or run there, but once you get there, you have to wait, because they may not be ready for you at the time, if or what, depending on the situation that's going on. And so you have to have patience too. And so it teaches you a lot of patience. It teaches you discipline. And when they say adapt, improvise, and overcome, that's exactly what happens. You learn how to adapt to certain situations. You learn how to improvise when you're in maybe a difficult situation, and you learn how to overcome things that might be happening to you. So those things, when you hear that, and also the saying about you do more before 9 a.m. than most people do all day, that's true too.
Do you remember any of your instructors?
Oh my goodness, that's been a while for basic training. I can tell you what, when I came out of basic training, I remember there was a sergeant, Sergeant First Class McDonald, I think his name was, and he was, I think, the person that really helped me to understand how to be able to move up in rank once you're in the military. Because he sat me down when I got in, he asked me, what did I expect from the military? That was one of his questions. And he said, so how do you think that you're going to accomplish moving up the ranks? What do you think you have to do? And so I told him, what I thought my version is. Hey, you just kind of, follow the rules, do what you have to do, and then put your packet in, and you'll get promoted. He says, well, some of that's true. But one of the things you have to remember, he says, you're not going to always stay in the same place, because in the military, they move you different places. He says, so if you are assigned to a unit that's, say, a transportation unit, make sure you get that specialty. If you're transferred to a civil affairs unit, make sure you get that specialty. And that's what I did, because it just so happened, I mean, he didn't use those specific examples, but what he was telling me was, when you go to a new unit and you're assigned to that unit and you're going to be there for a while, make sure you get that specialty, learn what they do so that you can have that specialty. And in the military, what happens is, when you put in for a promotion, you're years ago, when I first went in, when you would put in for a promotion, your rank, like when I first went in, I was 71, what they call a 71 Lima, which was an administrative specialist. But as the years went on, I gained other specialties, like the transportation military operational specialty, which they call MOS. I also gained the civil affairs MOS, and I was also a certified instructor. So what happened, which is one of the reasons why I was able to achieve the rank of sergeant major, because when you put in a packet, for example, as a 71 Lima, as an administrative specialist, guess what? Wow. There are like hundreds of those in the military. Wow. So your name goes on a list. And so depending on the things that's in your package, your training, your education, and all the awards that you might have gotten, that determines where you're placed on that list. And so sometimes when they're promoting in a unit, maybe they only need to promote 3 people. So if you're not one of the top 3, then your name may not get pulled for promotion. So when I gained the specialties like 88 November, which was the transportation specialty, and the civil affairs, which was 38 Alpha, well, as a 38 Alpha, I was able to really move up the ladder, because they're not, that's not a specialty that they have a whole lot of in the military. As a matter of fact, when I was deployed to Desert Storm, the reason why 16 of us was cut from our unit and put with the unit out of Fort Hood, which was a signal unit, is because they had no civil affairs people. And they needed some civil affairs people to go with them into Saudi Arabia. And I was one of the 16 that was cut and put with them. But having that,
So you
that
traveled
specialty,
Saudi Arabia.
yes, having that specialty was one of the things that helped me also to move up the rank. And that's why I would tell any soldier, when they're in the military, whenever you're assigned to a new unit and you don't have that specialty, make sure you get it, because it'll help you, you know, as you're being promoted to move up the ranks.
Is that the only place abroad you served, or is there any other country you served apart from Saudi Arabia?
Saudi Arabia, Germany, and where else did I go? Turkey. Yes.
How do you feel when you travel? What do you feel when you travel all up abroad?
Before you went, not so good, because you had to take a whole lot of shots and all this, you know, medical stuff that you had to go through and to make sure that you were okay to even go. But once you got there, well, for Desert Storm, being in Saudi Arabia, that was probably not my most favorite place to be, because at the time, as I said, we were assigned to the signal unit out of Fort Hood. So we were at Khobar Towers for a while, but once we left Khobar Towers, we were in the middle of the desert the whole time. I mean, all you could see for miles and miles around you was nothing but sand, nothing but dirt. That's it. You didn't see anything else.
You guys were walking?
Huh?
You guys were walking?
No, we were in a convoy. We were in trucks. And it was myself and two other, it was only 3 females, myself and 2 other females, and the rest were men. But that was, like I said, to me, probably the most, my most worst experience in the military. Having to be in the middle of the desert, being one of 3 females in a whole convoy of men, and we just kept traveling the whole time we were there. Our mission was to cross over into Kuwait. And so right before we crossed over into Kuwait, they called the ceasefire. So we didn't have to cross over into Kuwait. But we were almost at that line to cross over when they called that ceasefire.
Did you know anyone else was being deployed with you at the same location?
Well, yeah, my girlfriend, a good friend of mine, Adrian Bennett, she and I were one of the 3 females that were assigned to the unit out of Fort Hood. So she and I were deployed together, and we went together. Actually, she wound up staying probably, when I came back, she stayed a few months or so more than I did. And but yeah, she and I are good buddies. She has medical training, so she's a combat medic also too. And she and I, we were together the entire time during Desert Storm.
So, what type of reception did you have once you get out there abroad?
Well, after they called a ceasefire, we were back in what they called the town, which was I think the town was called Khobar too. And, you know, we got to then see a little bit of the town. We were able to go to Bahrain, which is a beautiful city. In Khobar, what I noticed was that, you know, we as soldiers, if you were in uniform, we were allowed to drive, the females were allowed to drive vehicles, but if you weren't in uniform, we were not allowed to drive. And we also, again, as females, we had to make sure that we were covered, you know, our arms and everything were covered up. But what I noticed
in Saudi Arabia?
Yes, in Saudi Arabia. I noticed that the females, they really looked at us strangely, because, you know, they had on the garb that they normally wear. And basically all we could see from them was their eyes. But they would really stare at us, but they never said anything. They didn't say anything to us.
Did you make friends over there?
Not really.
Not really.
Not really. Most of the time when we went somewhere, it was like a group of us. We didn't go anywhere alone. It was like a group of us, and we might be going to do a little shopping or what have you. We went to Qatar, this little town called Qatar, where they had a lot of vendors type people that had all these. It was almost like a what we would consider a flea market here, and they just had all kind of goods, clothing, and stuff like that that you could that they were selling.
I heard a lot that people don't even sleep at first. Do you feel in your first few days that you didn't
You mean
sleep?
when you get back, or
No, when you get over there?
when you
abroad?
get over there? Well, it's probably not the. I know when we landed in Saudi Arabia, the night we landed, a Scud missile went off, and we had to immediately go into our gas mask. So that did not make for a whole lot of wanting to go to sleep once you got there. But like I said in the beginning, we were in Khobar Towers, and Khobar Towers was actually not a bad place to stay. But it wasn't a whole lot of furnishing in it or anything like that. It was just like almost like a military barracks where you go in and you just make do with what was there.
Sure. What about the food?
But you had duty too. So you really didn't have like a regular here you can go to bed at night and you just sleep through the night. There you didn't have that because you still had to remember that you were in the military and that there was a war going on around you, So no, sleeping was probably not at its best during that time.
What about the food? Did you like the food up there?
The food?
Yeah.
Well, the military we had our own food. We did not, they always do their own food. We had our own water, things like that. Now, the times that when they called a ceasefire and we were back in the town, we did go to a couple places and eat, and the food was nice. It was. It wasn't bad.
Tell me something about the Desert Storm.
Tell you about Desert Storm? Well, during that time when I was deployed to Desert Storm, we went right after Christmas. We went down to Fort Bragg to get processed to go. So we actually deployed to Saudi Arabia, I think right after the New Year, January. It was either like January 3rd or something like that, because it was right after the New Year. And as I said, when we went on these big C-141s, and if you've ever been on one of those things, you're kind of strapped in. The vehicles are down the middle of the plane, and then you're like against the wall, and you're just kind of in one of these little, kind of like a hammock type seat that you're strapped in, and all the soldiers are just kind of strapped in, each on each side of the wall on each side of the vehicles. Like I said, you got to take care of your vehicle because that's what you're going to need once you get there.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, once we got there, the night that we landed, that's when the Scud missile went off and we had to go into our gas mask. And that happened a couple times while we were at Khobar Towers too, that actually woke us up during the night because the alarm went off and we had to go into our mask. But like I said, as far as being there, it was interesting to see the area and the place, and even being in the when we were out in the desert, like I said, most of what you saw was nothing but dirt and sand. But at some points we did see tents, and there were Bedouins living out in the middle of the desert.
Wow.
So there are some that still live in the middle of the desert.
That's awesome. Were you involved in any combat action?
Our mission, one of our missions, I should say, was to we would get any prisoners that we came across. So at some points we did find some prisoners and we'd have them, but we didn't have them for long because we didn't have a whole lot of areas to keep them. And like I said, we tend to keep moving. But that was probably the most exciting thing that happened. We didn't have to actually go into firing or combat or anything like that. And one of the things that made me happy being in that convoy in the middle of the desert is that we had these Bradley tanks, and they surrounded us kind of out on the perimeters. So I always felt that if I looked out and I saw a Bradley tank, everything would be okay. But if one of those disappeared, then we would be in trouble. But I think if we had crossed over into Kuwait, we probably would have been more into having to fire our weapons or what have you. But because we did not, they called the ceasefire right before we crossed over into Kuwait. We did not really get into any gun battles during the time that we were on the convoys.
But have you trained to use guns or whatever?
Oh, yeah. Well, you learn in basic training because that's one of the things you have to qualify with your weapon. And I must say that I've qualified experts, so don't mess with me. But yeah, you have to qualify with the rifle. And once you reach the rank of sergeant first class or E8 or E9, you can also qualify with the sidearm, which would be a 9mm.
Well, what's your favorite?
My favorite?
Weapon?
Oh, I like that rifle because it had a longer range. I like the rifle. So, it's one of those things, if you're going to learn, you need to learn on both and be proficient on both because, hey, if you're going to be out there, you got to be able to defend yourself.
Would you be interested in direct combat actions?
Direct combat action? Well, we would train for that. So you had to be prepared for it, should it happen. To say that I would have wanted to be in it, not necessarily. Oh. But the fact that I would like to say that if I had been in it, my training would have kicked in and I would have been able to do what I needed to do.
What did you do for relaxation and recreation when you're not on duty?
When we were not on duty, oh wow, wasn't a whole lot to do in the middle of the desert. So when we were not on duty, basically you were just trying to stay away from, trying to stay away from the bugs. But it wasn't a whole lot to do, to be honest with you. I mean, it wasn't a whole lot to do in the middle of the desert. If you had something to read, you could read or what have you, but it wasn't like you see sometimes on TV where the soldiers gather in a tent and they might watch a movie or whatever. We didn't have that. They didn't bring equipment for you to watch a movie, so you just had to entertain yourself, however. I had brought my little cassette type thing to listen to music. So I could listen to music every now and then because it was battery operated till I ran out of all my batteries. But other than that, that was about it. It wasn't like I said, wasn't a whole lot to do in the middle of the desert. And then you had duty. You might have night duty, guard duty, or what have you. So you may not have had a whole lot of free time.
Do you remember any of the songs you keep listening to a lot?
To be honest, one of the songs that I used to like that was really soothing for me, it was, and this was on a song on what is this guy's name? Not Kenny Rogers, the other one. I can't think of his name, but it was an all music song, and it was just the instrumental on the song in the song that I really liked, and so I used to play that a lot because it was kind of soothing, at night. Yeah.
Did you have anything special for good luck? Like how people have special chains, rings, and stuff like that. Your faith.
My faith.
Nice.
That was my good luck. I mean, rabbit's foot, medallions, all of those are good for people that, think that helps them. But for me, it's prayer, it's faith, and that's what I depended on when I was over there.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Where were you still in contact with your family and friends back home?
Am I still in contact now?
When you were in
service. That's the probably the one bright moment to get a letter back from home or to get a tin can of cookies or something like that, you know. So yeah, wrote letters, and you didn't always get them, you know, like every 2 weeks or anything like that. You know, one letter might take forever to reach you. But as a matter of fact, when we were deployed, as I said, we left right after New Year's, and I think right after that, my mom, as a matter of fact, she had a stroke, and they tried to reach us, my unit, but they couldn't because we were mobile. We were moving the whole time in the middle of the desert. So by the time they did, when we stopped and when they called the ceasefire, that's when they were able to reach our unit. So by that time, my mom had had the stroke. She had been in the hospital, and she was out of the hospital, and she was with her sister recuperating. Wow. By the time they reached me to even give me the news that this had even happened.
Did you have any impact on homesickness?
Did I have homesick? Well, yeah, you do. I mean, because when you're laying there thinking about the fact that you're in the middle of some place that, you know, you really don't really want to be, and you could be at home enjoying a nice bed or a nice meal or, you know, with your family or a nice movie, yeah, you get homesick. You get homesick. So, yeah, I experienced some of those times.
What kind of friendship did you form during service, and with whom?
Well, we had, you know, being in a unit and being deployed with people that you spent so much time with in such close quarters and everything, you're going to form friendships, you know, people that that you know you depend on. If something were to happen, you would depend on these people to have your back. So yeah, formed a lot of friendships, and as a matter of fact, we just had a reunion, civil affairs reunion, about a month or so ago. Nice. At National Harbor, nice. Where a couple of us met up and just kind of chilled, talked about
you know,
old
name them?
Time.
Some of your few friends.
Well, we had Willie was there. Well, Sergeant. If I just said Willie, huh? What was it? I call him by his first name now, but Willie, he was there, and of course Adrian, she was there, and we had was it Colonel Ryan? We had Major Johnson. It was probably about, I would say at least about 10 people or so that actually were able to make it. Because remember, these are just people that were in this area. We had people that were from all over that actually deployed with us. But wow. These were just some people that actually live in this area now that came. Yeah.
So when exactly did your war service end?
When did it end?
Yeah.
I officially retired in April of 2007. Yes, that was my official coming out time.
And when you get home, what type of reception did your family and friends receive you?
When I got back, when the bus pulled in, because you know we landed at Andrews Air Force Base, and then the bus took us to there was a bus that took us to our unit, and when we got to the unit, which was on Dower House Road, actually, a lot of my friends, they were standing there, and they had this big old sign with my name on it, and they had flowers and just all kind of stuff, and it was just great. It just, of course, it was really a sentimental time for me to see these people who had taken time out of, their schedule to come and welcome me home, and it was just great. I still have pictures of it, where they were all there and with the big sign and the flowers and everything.
Did you recall how many people was there?
Oh, there were a lot, because they're not just people for me, but people for the other soldiers too. So there were a lot of people that had come out to welcome us back, and also too, they did for the Desert Storm soldiers. They also did a parade after that too. They had a parade, I think, in D.C. that they did for the Desert Storm soldiers.
Um, were there any issues with readjusting to your civilian life?
For a while, yeah. I think I had to adjust to being back home. I guess, I don't know, some people call it a little post-traumatic syndrome or whatever. Mine wasn't too extensive, but I do remember not really wanting to be around anybody for a while. And I was like that until I actually went home to New Orleans to be with my family. And once I was able to go home and be with my family, you know, I think I was able to get past that. But for a while, when I came back home, yeah, it was different, and I just didn't want to be around people.
Have you remained friends with your fellow veterans?
I would say for the most part, yeah. Every now and then we keep in contact. Some I'm in contact more than others. But you see some of them every now and then will pop up on my Facebook or, you know, or something like that. But, so yeah, as a matter of fact, the Facebook is how we all got together with the reunion thing, because the Major Ryan put it out there that we're gonna be doing this, and anybody that's in the area, you know, come out. So, but yeah, you tend to keep in touch with some more than others.
So after all these years, last year was the date you met everyone.
That was for the reunion.
Reunion.
That was a couple months ago, about 2 months ago. We did it over at National Harbor. It was like a Sunday evening. They met over there. Yeah.
Describe your life since separating from military.
Well, since leaving the military, it's been good. I have my own business, which you know, I mostly focus on now, and I still try to do things with veterans. As a matter of fact, you know, attend events or whenever there's something where you can volunteer or whatever, I try to stay in contact and stay involved in those types of things. So I think since leaving the military, it's been good. I can't complain.
Were you able to translate some of your military training to a job?
Yeah, I was. As a matter of fact, with the being over an entire unit, that was one of the things that helped me in my civilian when I was also working civilian-wise. I was able to get promoted into a position that I don't know that I would have gotten promoted into had I not had the military background and the military experience that I had. As a matter of fact, I worked in domestic terrorism, and I did that for I did that for a while. But even before that, I was able to. I was an investigative specialist, which meant that I actually did surveillance, and I was able to. I used to tell people I got paid to mind other people's business. So I did those types of things, and I think I was able to do that because of my military background.
So tell me about the jobs you did after you got out of the military.
Well, like I said, I did the surveillance, which was the actual title was investigative specialist. I did that for about 4 years, and then I applied for another position where I was. I actually got into intelligence work, which was working a lot with domestic terrorism and doing a lot of work with that. And one of the things that I also got to do was go out and do the threat briefing to a lot of agencies on terrorism. And I even got to give a threat briefing to the Attorney General, Eric Holder, when he first took office. He wanted a threat briefing on domestic terrorism, and I was able to do that. So one of those accomplishments I'm very proud of.
Right.
Yeah, so, but yeah, those are some of the things that I did since being out of the military.
Hey, what do you think was the most valuable thing you got from your military service?
the most valuable thing I've gotten from my military service, I would say just being able to serve my country and, knowing that there, you have to take an interest. You have to not sit on the sidelines and say, "Hey, I'm not going to do this. This has nothing to do with me." But I think the most valuable thing for me was being able to serve my country.
All right. How did your wartime experience affect your life?
I think having to be away, being away from the things that you are familiar with, going into places that you're not familiar with, going into places that not only takes you out of your comfort zone, but it takes you out of your comfort period, because most of the time when you go off and you're deployed, you're going to places that they don't necessarily have the structure that we have here, that we tend to take for granted.
Sure.
Like for example, in Saudi Arabia at Khobar Towers, one of the things that we got told is that we couldn't use too much water because, as Americans, we like to bathe 3 times a day and all of this kind of stuff. Well, couldn't do that there because the place was just not set up for that much water use.
Oh, yeah.
And so you have to remember when you're in the military that you're not always going to go somewhere where it's comfortable. And you just have to kind of live with that.
What are some of the lessons you learned from your service?
Like I said, I think for me, the discipline and to being able to adapt to anything, I always like that phrase, adapt, improvise, and overcome, or either lead, follow, or get out the way. And those are things that I believe in. If you're not going to do something, then get out of the way. Let somebody else do it. And I think for me, those are some lessons that I learned that I've implemented since being in the military and being out of the military.
If you get a chance to go back and do this all over again, would you still join the military?
I think I would. I think I would, because I can't say that it was ever a really bad experience. And, although some of the places, like I said, you go to might not be the best,
That's true.
but you still know that you're doing something worthwhile, and that's why you're there. And I was able to get a lot out of it. I got, school paid for, I got to travel a lot, so who can complain about that?
Yeah, true. What message would you like to leave the future generation who will view this interview?
I would say if you have the chance to serve your country, then you should take it, because you will learn a lot. Being in the military, people think that, you can't do anything, or, you're limited to certain things. Well, that's not true. You're only limited if you limit yourself. And if you go in the military, there are a lot of things that you can learn. There are a lot of different fields, a lot of different areas. For example, if you want to go into medicine, you can learn that. If you want to go into interrogation, you can learn that. It's just so much that you can learn in the military that you might not be able to, get into as a civilian outside of the military. But one of the things that you can't go wrong is that if you want to serve your country, that's one of the best ways to do it.
How has military service impacted your feeling about the war and the military in general?
As I said, for me, how is it impacted as far as war is concerned? I think when you're in the military and you sign your name on the dotted line, then you know there's a possibility that you're going to be deployed. You may be deployed somewhere, and it could be an area where there is combat. And so if you know that you don't want to do this, or if you don't believe in this, then maybe the military is not the place for you to go just because you want to get your education paid for. So I think that if you're gonna do it, then just make sure you understand that serving your country means just that, and that could mean, loss of life, loss of limb, or what have you, loss of family, loss of friends sometimes. So you just have to be prepared for that if you sign your name on the dotted line.
All right. Is there anything you feel like we haven't discussed, or do you want to add something to this interview?
No, I don't. For me, I love my country. I love what I've done to serve my country, be it in the military or civilian. And I don't think I would, if I had it to do again, I probably would do the same thing. Now, maybe going in the military this time, I might go into officers training and see how that is. But other than that, I think I would do it all over again. Because
All right.
for me, it was the right thing to do.
Thank you, Sergeant Major Lewis. I'm Wimbledon Ante with Prince George's Community College. I want to thank the offices of Congresswoman Donna L. Edwards and the Library of Congress. That's it.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.